Hello everybody, it's me, Roku, here with more League of Legends content, and today we're going to talk about the mythic options for Darius. Now, I'm making this video because basically every time I make a gameplay video, or I stream actually, I get bombarded with 50, like hundreds of questions about my mythic choices. Like if I build a Stridebreaker, I get 10 questions about why I built it over Triforce, and at this point, I get that there's a lot of confusion about the mythic choices for Darius, and although I have given my opinion on the different mythics in, separate cases, I want to just make one updated video that I can just, answer all of your questions in. And what I'm going to basically specifically focus on is all these mythics and their specific use cases, and keep in mind that this is the new patch 11.21, with the updated Stridebreaker and the updated Goredrinker. I've been getting a lot of questions asked about Goredrinker as well. People think that the Omnivamp is, it makes it a better choice for Darius, but I'll talk about that later. Now, let's just get right into the video. Before I talk about the mythics, I want to hit you guys up with two quick disclaimers. One, although, picking the right mythic is good, if you're picking a mythic that you don't know how to use, then you should just, pick the one that you do know how to use. What do I mean by this? If you are used to Triforce, right, you always build Triforce, but let's say there's a game where Divine Sunderer is better, but you don't know how to use Divine Sunderer, then maybe you should stick to just Triforce, because at the end of the day, the builds and stuff, the runes don't really matter too much on Darius. What matters more is how good you are as a player, which is the second disclaimer. Switching your item build is not going to suddenly make you the best player in the world and it's going to get you to a new rank. All it's going to do is going to make you like 1-2% better overall. Out of 100 games you've built, probably you get like a 2-3% boost to your win rate, but that is basically it. If you want to see major improvements, you should improve at the game and not care too much about builds. Okay, with those two out of the way, without further ado, let's just talk about the mythics. Now, the most popular mythic that's built by basically like most Darius players is Triforce. And I can understand it because Triforce gives us the most amount of damage, and I was a big advocate for Triforce. And I think that if you don't know how to pick the best item for the best case, just pick Triforce, because it kind of works with Darius's kit. And if you're a player who knows how to abuse the combos and stuff for Darius, like your attack speed and stuff, Triforce is basically like your best option because it gives you a ton of damage, and it allows you to just combo everything just really like perfectly. It lets you pull off your ERRs, it lets you to get all the auto cancels out properly. It just works incredibly well for a player who knows how to abuse Darius. So if you're a good Darius player and you get fed in lane, then you should always go Triforce, because basically speaking, if you're fed in lane as Darius, you should just wait for your sums, and when your sums are up, just go fight and kill everyone. And Triforce really just lets you catch squishies and just one-shot them with RWQR, basically. It's just, you kill people really quickly, especially squishies. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, if you are fed in lane, Triforce is still the way to go. But that's not what you guys see me building most of the time in my games. That's not, what most high-elo Darius players build. The thing that most high-elo Darius players build is Stridebreaker. Now, why is this? Okay, they nerfed Stridebreaker, they took out the dash, and there's a big discussion, at least in Twitch chats and comment sections, on as to how, is Stridebreaker still good? And in my opinion, and basically the opinion of every other Darius player, which is basically the right opinion, it's still good, and it's basically the go-to choice for most tough games. Basically speaking, right, there are two things about Stridebreaker that make it excellent, alright? On top of giving us all the stats we need in terms of the attack speed and stuff, the slow is 40% slow for 3 seconds. Now, for those of you who don't understand how huge this is, let me explain why, okay? A 3-second slow is absolutely huge. So if you ever get into a fight with someone and you slow them with Stridebreaker, you can very effectively kite them. So if you're up against like a Fiora or a Riven or like someone they have to kite, like Trinity, for example, if you use Stridebreaker, you can kite them so hilariously well, because 40% slow for 3 seconds is huge. And it's even huge in team fights. So let's say you guys catch an ADC, okay? Now, we do know that a lot of ADCs have Gale Force, all these dashes, but if you can get the Stridebreaker slow off on top of them, then even if they flash away, you'll still catch up to them because it's a slow for 3 seconds, okay? So even if I do, like, Stridebreaker and it dashes away, I can still walk to him and catch him. And God forbid I have Ghost, he can't even get away after he dashes away. So, like, Stridebreaker doesn't catch you new opponents, but it does make it so that the opponents you catch stay in your range and eventually die. And also, if you are playing with other players who understand how Darius works, Stridebreaker is probably the one you're going to go for the most, because that slow on anybody means that the target you slowed is essentially just CC'd enough for your team to just jump on them and catch up to them and then kill them, So it's still great for picks. And then, you guys can catch on him, get all your damage off, and then get your reset and just kill everyone else together, okay? The other part that's a bit underrated but still great is the Mythic passive, which is the 2% move speed. Now, it's worse than the previous version of it, which was 3% move speed per item, but it's still more move speed than any other, Mythic in the game. So, versus some of the more tough matchups, not the matchup, for some of the more tough team compositions, like, let's say there's 4 range champions, then Stridebreaker can really help you out, because the move speed is going to be quite huge when it comes to fighting against some of these champions, okay? So, yeah. To sum it all up, for those of you who don't really care too much about the complicated specifics, Stridebreaker is good. 1, where you're up against tough teams. 2, when you're up against matchups that have a lot of mobility, where the slow is really huge, like Fury or something, that you need to kite very well. And 3, when you aren't that fed out of lane, okay? Because the thing with Triforce is that the damage of it spikes really hard, but it kind of spikes with your level, okay? If you're higher level than everyone, then Triforce lets you touch people and kill them instantly. But if you're not that much higher level than everybody on the map, then, it's more worth it to go for the more utility so that you can work better with your team. That's why you're going to see, like, all the high elo players who play Darius go Stridebreaker, basically, because, like, not only are you not going to get that much ahead in lane, but also, like, your teammates are going to know how to play around you for the most part. Obviously, if you've been seeing my streams, you'd argue against that because we still see really stupid people there. But generally speaking, people understand Darius, and the slow of it means that you're more of a teamwork champion. And yeah, that's why Stridebreaker is the most commonly built item in higher elos, as far as I see, I only see, like, more filled people build, like, Triforce or whatever. Like, most people just build a Stridebreaker. Divine Sunderer. Now, this is an item that is honestly underrated, but it has a very nice niche that is just, like, not really appreciated as much. The thing about Divine Sunderer is that it's the best mythic out of all of them for 1v1s, okay? So, if you're up against a 1v1 and you lost it, then you need Divine Sunderer. Let's say you're up against an Ornn or a Malphite, a tank, right? And you get ganked or you just lose 1v1 because their champs are kind of annoying to deal with. Build Divine Sunderer, and then you can suddenly just destroy them no matter what. Like, an Ornn can't even stand up to you if you build this item, okay? So, like, from that perspective, if you're up against someone who stacks a lot of health, like even Kled, for example, then Divine Sunderer is going to help you a lot in 1v1s. Even against a lot of bruiser matchups, like, Divine Sunderer just helps you out in 1v1s. And if you're in games where you have to win lane, then that Divine Sunderer can be that extra push you need to really just put you in a position where you're winning lane, especially after you've lost lane. So, for that niche of tank killing, and also that extra boost in 1v1s when you're really behind, Divine Sunderer is the go-to. Now, one more thing with Divine Sunderer is that it basically makes Black Cleaver a useless item. I know I've said this many times in the past, but never build Black Cleaver on Darius. This item sucks. This item's a dead item for this season, and in any circumstance where Black Cleaver will be useful, Divine Sunderer is even more useful. Because you don't have to sacrifice a spot in your inventory for this. You can just go the mythic item that gives you all you need, and the, anti-tank thing, and just go the normal Darius build. So, yeah. Last but not least, Goredrinker. Now, Goredrinker has gotten the same change to its active as Stridebreaker, in that it's gone from all of your, like 100% of your total AD to 175% of your base AD. So, this is kind of an early game buff for both the items, because, earlier on you do get, more base damage, but for, like, later on, it's more of a buff to just Darius, like to Stridebreaker, than to Goredrinker, because with Stridebreaker, you use it early on in your combo anyway. You know, you don't use Stridebreaker like after you get Noxian Might. You use it like during catching people, so begin the fight. Okay, it's more of a nerf to Goredrinker because we use Goredrinker pretty late in our combo, like when we're about to die. Okay, and a lot of the times we have Noxian Might while we are about to die, so like the damage is a bit nerfed on Goredrinker. But that's not even what we're wondering about the most. We're wondering about whether the Omnivamp makes up for the 15% extra AD, the lower HP you have. And I kind of dislike that I have to point this out, but Goredrinker is unbuildable now. Like, if you were up against really good compositions before, you could build Goredrinker, and it is easier to use than Triforce. But, like, without the extra 15% AD, there's basically no use for this item. Now, the thing about the 50% AD was that before, if you were low HP and you had Noxian Might, the amount of AD you would get was so huge that it would just, you know, it would put an entire chunk of damage on top of your damage and just, you know, like let you chop people up basically, just one shot them, even if you die, right? And it did make you a big ball of like just stats. But now, like, we lost that in exchange for Omnivamp. And I've already made multiple videos and talked about this multiple times, but Lifesteal and Omnivamp in general are the worst stats for Darius, because Darius is a champion that builds a lot of health, right? He builds a lot of tankiness. So, going Lifesteal doesn't really help him, because you're never going to Lifesteal a significant amount of your HP back. Not to mention how the money you spent on Lifesteal items can just be spent on tank items, and the healing you get with your Q is basically going to be like higher. Like with tank items, your Q heal is usually higher than the lifesteal you get with lifesteal items, okay? So lifesteal is an absolute waste of stats, and the Omnivamp we get is not really worth losing the 15% AD. So in my opinion, though was kind of usable now in some instances, Goredrinker is absolutely horrible now, and you should not touch it, because they really just destroy this item for Darius, you know? They actually destroyed it for a lot of champions, so I'm kind of glad. Like, this item is worse on everybody right now. It's worse on Riven, it's worse on Fiora kinda, even though she's more comfortable to build it early on. It's a big nerf on all the assassins, which is amazing. So I kind of like these Goredrinker changes because it nerfs all the Goredrinker abusers. But for us Darius players, Goredrinker, though was an option for some of us, it's now not an option at all, period. So yeah, that is my opinion on all of Darius's mythics. To sum it all up, in case you've been snoozing in Roku's classroom, you should build Triforce when you're fed, ahead, and you have a level lead above everybody. You should build a Stridebreaker if you're more even with the enemy, if you're up against champions who are really mobile, or if you are in a high rank game where you have more teamwork, right? And like you're up against a team that just kites you very well. You should build Divide and Sunderer if you have to deal with a lot of tanks, and if you have to win the 1v1, right? If you gotta win the 1v1. And you should build Goredrinker never. Anyway, guys, that's pretty much it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Check out the rest of my videos. I got a matchup video too, if you guys want to take a look at that. And I'll see you boys in the next video. Peace out.